Hello everybody, today we're taking a look at the UBAR3 and the UBARX. The UBAR3 and the UBARX are the latest generation in the UBAR series of lowers. Of course, they're given their name by that iconic U-bolt at the rear buffer tower, which gives them exceptional strength. They also feature an I-bolt up at the front, made of steel, to give them a superior strength at the front takedown pin location, because of course that is a common failure point for lowers that use printed materials up in that area or don't have this sort of reinforcement. The UBAR1 and UBAR2 are both good lower designs, but the UBAR3 offers several improvements, both in function and compatibility with different series of uppers and different series of parts, but it also adds a series of ergonomic improvements that I also think are worth mentioning. These improvements include things like fencing around the magazine catch, extra clearance around the bolt hold open in order to make it a little bit easier to press, additionally a way to remove the bolt hold open roll pin without destroying the lower, so that if for some reason you did want to change bolt hold open paddles, you are able to do so. There's sort of lightning cut, not that you lose a lot of weight in plastic, but a little bit of material reduction on the sides of the mag well because material isn't quite needed there. I guess it also makes it look better. Finally, we have ambi selector support, which was something that was missing from the previous versions of the lower. A final improvement can be seen here on the bottom of the lower, where there's thicker, more substantial material that not only increases the strength of the thing, but also makes it a little bit more comfortable to use. Compared to the previous version of the UBAR, you can see you have quite a bit less material here, you have no fencing in place, and a little bit less clearance around the bolt hold open paddle. You may be asking, well, why is there a UBAR3 and a UBARX? What's the difference? Well, UBAR3 is all of the improvements I've mentioned this lower having, only it takes the standard screw-on pistol grips. However, the screw-on grips is really the weak link on most printed lowers these days. The systems of reinforcement found on this lower, the Hoffman, or any of the others available are good enough that really when you see failure, it's in how the grip screws onto the lower. So similar to how Hoffman has an integrated grip option, the UBARX is the UBAR3 with that integrated grip. Of course, the downsides to an integrated grip is it sort of becomes a one-size-better-fit-all, right? If you don't like the way this grip fits in your particular hand, then you're sort of out of luck, or you'd have to modify it to fit you better. Whereas with interchangeable grips, you can find a grip that you like and put that on the gun. However, the big advantage, of course, to integrated grips is this is tons stronger than the screw-on grip systems. As well as you don't have to deal with tapping that hole and then sticking a screw in it. You avoid all of that complexity by just having the grip print integral to the lower. When it comes to the parts compatibility differences, probably the most important one is that the UBAR3 and UBARX both support A2 or typical rifle size stocks. You can put a rifle buffer tube on the lower, you can put a rifle stock on the lower. You can use those fixed stocks and fixed buffer tubes that people like for aesthetic reasons, also because it is quite ergonomic and comfortable. As with the UBAR2, there's also versions available for if lowers do or don't have a forward assist. And new on the UBAR3 is for lowers where people want to use anti-walk pins, there's clearance around the trigger pin holes so that you can install the screw caps on anti-walk pins if you are so inclined. That wraps up most of the improvements that are featured in the UBAR3 and UBARX, and so I should mention it is available on the catalog. You can find it on Odyssey. It's sailing, as the kids say these days. With all that said, let's discuss the two items we have here and then shoot them a little bit. On top, of course, we have an earlier version of the UBAR3. It lacks some of the improvements, the ergonomic enhancements that I had mentioned it has, but it does show off that we have A2 tube support. Of course, in the final version of the UBAR3 and UBARX, the lower is like so, with the grip if you so choose, with an A2 stock if you so choose, with anti-walk pins if you so choose. As far as the upper, it's a Palmetto State Armory 20-inch upper, and we have an old OSS can. Of course, these were really cool when they came out, one of the fully machined, lots of internal baffles, blow forward can. Very cool system that has, as advertised way back when, really no increase in back pressure whatsoever. It's a very comfortable can to shoot with no gas back in the face. So we'll shoot that. Additionally, we have a Colt IAR upper on our UBARX here with the A5 stock. So it's like a clone correct, except for being on a integrated pistol grip printed lower, which isn't hardly clone correct at all. But I was one of these uppers. I thought they were really cool, and I thought it would be a good match. It's got those sort of bulky, futuristic vibes that I think the lower matches pretty well. So we'll shoot this thing as well. And yes, I do note that it's kind of funny because we have one that's big and awfully quiet and one that's loud, short, and rather obnoxious. So we'll go ahead and shoot these things, maybe make some idle observations about how the two of them shoot, and then do some closing thoughts. All right, so first up here we have our great big gun with our overbarrel OSS suppressor. Got us some bullets here. Go ahead and get her locked open. Bump our cheap red dot sight on. I figured I'd put this red dot on this gun and then throw it off if it ever lost zero, but it's held zero pretty well so far. Of course, with as smooth as this thing shoots, I guess it's not really a surprise that a cheap red dot has held zero so well, but we'll go ahead and shoot it. And I guess before anybody asks why the iron sight's in front, I put it there just because it irks people. It's really the whole reason why. I guess the Canadians do a similar thing, but I just do it to irk people. But we'll go ahead, shoot some targets here, and of course, get our little safety brief out of the way. I am wearing safety glasses. Shooting steel this close with rifles without safety glasses is a really, really dumb idea. Don't be cavalier with your safety. It's not cool to be unsafe in this way anyway. But we'll go ahead and see if we can't slap a little bit of steel with this thing. I think I may have just been pelting the camera there with spent brass, so I might rotate my body a little bit further than I usually do, and maybe lean forward some more to maybe prevent spent brass from going straight into the camera. There we go. The one word that I would use to describe how this thing shoots is unbelievably soft. And you know, it's quiet enough. I do have my ears in because I'll be shooting the short one next, but this thing is almost quiet enough. It's just completely hearing safe, at least when shot outdoors. The 20-inch barrel plus the volume of this can really does reduce the noise level a lot. Of course, the can does add a pound and then 4 inches of length to an already long gun, so it is certainly quite cumbersome, right? You pay a price for that, but it shoots so smooth. There's really no increase in cycling energy. The gun just comes very naturally right back to where it was aimed initially after you fired it. I really do like this setup, all things considered. Next up, we have the miniature flashbang emitter. Of course, the cool thing about these uppers, something that Colt had come up with in competition with the M27, it's got a great big aluminum heatsink underneath the barrel. The thought is that would keep the barrel cooler for heavier duty firing schedules. Of course, for civilian applications, I don't know that that makes a ton of sense, right? Because most people can't afford to go and dump 600 rounds straight in order to be able to enjoy the fact that you can continue shooting it at that point, as opposed to, you know, an M4 is ready to have its barrel burst, ready to have a gas tube burst about that point, whereas the idea was this would be able to continue firing. I guess as originally designed, this thing had a 16-inch barrel. This is the FBI version. I guess for some reason they felt they needed 600 rounds consecutively for room clearing or something. I don't know. I've tried to have people who work at Colt explain that to me, and I haven't been able to get a very good answer. But this is certainly a very interesting thing, and I just love the way it looks on top of that printed lower. We'll go ahead, put some shots through this thing. Maybe we'll try a couple of double taps on the large target, and then see if we can move quickly over to put a single tap on the smaller target. In comparison to the, of course, longer gun, this thing is a little bit less smooth. That's just sort of the way it goes with short gas system ARs. They're just a little bit more violent. However, the recoil overall, at least for me, feels more manageable just because the gun is so short in its center of balance, right? The center of weight of the thing is so close to, between your hands, so centered, that it does still make the gun very easy to control. But with all that yammering aside, we'll go ahead, make sure we've got our dot turned on here, and go shoot a little bit of steel. Oh, I need to push my hearing protection further in. This thing is a lot louder than the... Would you believe that an 11-inch barrel is a lot louder than a 20-inch barrel with a suppressor? Who would have known? There we go. So I guess as you guys could see, this thing makes a lot more light, a lot more noise, a lot more flash. And despite its shorter overall barrel and its weight being almost identical to the longer gun, it does move you around a little bit more. And that's just, again, the weight isn't as far out front, so while it feels more controllable, it does still have the ability to move you more. And because it's got that shorter gas system, it's just going to cycle with a little bit more energy. But there's our short gun. Let's go ahead, look back at them, and maybe we'll load up another mag or two. All right, so we're back with our bench. We have some 12 gauge, 1180 foot per second, 223 here. That's just a convenient box for anybody wondering. We'll load up another couple of mags here and then maybe do a little bit more plinking with these things. But this is the engagement bait section of the video. Put in the comments which one you'd rather have. If it was your birthday and your mom got you an airsoft gun like these, which airsoft gun would you want? Would you want the Colt 16 or would you want the Jingong short one 16 gas blowback versus automatic electric gearbox? Say which one you want. You have to say the one, or else the video stops. Okay, engagement bait's over. I like them both. All things considered, I guess the funny part of this is I bought that can as like a used police surplus thing. I paid $300 for the can. I think I paid like $250 for the upper. It was a pre-COVID PSA upper, so really, really good deal on that. So I think that entire build was under 800 bucks with the can included. This upper alone was almost twice what this entire other gun cost. And you know, if you had me do the engagement bait, it's this one all day long, as funny as that sounds, just because it just shoots so nice. But that said, it's not like I dislike the IAR. It's just that for what the IAR costs, it's not like twice as expensive good as the other build is, certainly. But it is probably about that cool. Got one mag loaded up here. Let's go ahead, shoot maybe about half that mag through this gun, and then we'll shoot it through this gun just to sort of compare them. And then you guys can watch the video and pixel track and see which one of them's better. Okay, starting back off with our long gun. This is an empty magazine. This is a magazine with plenty of thunder plugs in it. We'll just go and maybe run the targets back and forth with it and then switch over to the IAR and see how that goes. One thing I should mention is the suppressor, of course, traps a lot of heat, but this being an over barrel suppressor means that that heat gets trapped over the barrel, gets conducted to the barrel, convected to the barrel, and then that makes the barrel get hotter and the handguard on this thing get hotter faster than before it had the suppressor on it. I wasn't expecting that, but then once you see how this suppressor is set up, it makes a lot of sense, because of course your muzzle ends about there, right where my finger is about where the actual muzzle threads are, and so all of this sits over the barrel, and there's a very thin gap between the barrel and the suppressor, so heat does get exchanged there, and there's just more heat overall in the entire system as a result of that. But all of this yammering about scientific stuff aside, let's go ahead, run the targets back and forth. And I'm sorry, I'm again shooting the camera with this brass, but that's just going to be the way it goes. Let's do that one more time. I'll go left to right and then hit right again and come back to the left. I didn't hit right again. The shooter did not understand the course of fire, but we'll dump this mag so that we can run it in the IAR here and do one more shot on the right target to make up for it. There we go. Thing is empty. This thing is also extremely dirty because ever since putting the suppressor on this thing, it's become my favorite AR to shoot just because it's smooth and it's quiet and as much fun as short, obnoxious ARs are, and as vehemently as I'm sure we all agree that we should be able to own them without having to do all of the awful tax stamp stuff. This really isn't that great to shoot in comparison to an AR that's pleasant and not obnoxious and is smoother anyway. But we'll go ahead, get this thing closed up. Let's go ahead and do, again, run them left, then run them right, and then we'll expend the rest of the mag on the big target there. There we go. And good Lord, this thing just doesn't stop being loud. You can never have your earplugs in quite far enough with it, but it does shoot quite well. And I guess maybe I should mention, I did have to put a Lantac bolt carrier in this gun. Of course, the Lantac's like one of these wonder carriers that seals up better or whatever. The factory Colt bolt carrier that came with this gun would short stroke sometimes with some ammo, especially when it was cold. It wasn't really doing it when it was warm, but the Lantac carrier ran cold or warm. I'm not sure if it was a combination of bolt bounce or just the bolt carrier not getting quite enough energy, but just sometimes it would refuse to work very well. But of course, with that improved bolt carrier in the gun, it just runs perfect, and so it gets to stay in there for now. But we do still have some more ammo. I'm not entirely sure I have anything else to tell you guys, so maybe we'll load up a few more rounds, shoot them through the long gun just because it's so much more pleasant, and then send you guys on your way. Again, the UBAR3 and UBARX, by the time you're seeing this video, are available. You guys can go and make them, and of course it's always cool to experiment, right? It's fun to put the funky Colt upper on the integrated grip lower. It just sort of looks futuristic. I've seen a couple of people now that have been experimenting with the beta testing that have done the integrated grip lowers with SP1 uppers. I've even built one, right? The sort of retro AR thing, but with the integrated grip. It's a very interesting look. I like the way it looks, but of course it's, like with any printed lower, right? It's just a fun way to experiment with things or test out a build without having to fully commit to an aluminum lower. So for some people that's cool. Of course for me, I like to have these be like, guns that I bring to the range and then share with friends to see how well they hold up. Of course, this one here on the top has been a UBAR1 that was rebuilt as a UBAR2 and is now rebuilt as a UBAR3. Eventually I'll probably rebuild it with the integral grip lower, but that upper's had tons of rounds through it at this point. And even just specifically on that lower, It's probably a good 1500, 2000, and as we expect from well-designed lowers these days, round count alone isn't really going to be the thing that kills them. It's that abuse, right? And that abuse will break pistol grips. For lowers that have plastic, front takedown or rotation lugs, they'll break there because they're plastic. But with the steel U-bolt and with the steel reinforcement in the front, these things hold up really well, and especially with the integral grip, it's just really hard to beat them. Finish stuffing this mag full. Maybe this will just be enough. I'm not sure how many this is. It's maybe like 25. We'll go ahead, shoot this through the long gun, and then I'll say goodbye. All right, this thing has been sitting on the table, and as mentioned, it does get really hot, but we'll go ahead, put another 25-ish rounds through it, and then send you guys on your way. I don't know as far as the firing schedule that we'll do. Maybe I'll just run left and right, and if I miss one, I'll come back and correct it until we're out of ammo. Let's see how that works out. Go. This thing does almost shoot itself with how smooth it is. A couple of those you heard funny ricochet sounds on as the targets get to rocking and one can hit and then reflected a direction over that way, which is a safe direction. Again, for people who shoot steel, like gets shot here, it's a good idea to have the steel angled so that ricochets go in a direction that's not towards you or something that's important. Because believe it or not, off of these targets, even here's a fun little anecdote, even from this rifle in particular, shooting this ammo in particular, I have had a jacket from one of these rounds come back 100 yards before. It didn't have much energy coming back 100 yards, but you can imagine shooting at 25 yards if you didn't have eye protection and it came back with enough energy that it would have carried to 100 yards. Would have really sucked if that hit you in the eye. So again, eye protection. It's not just a good idea. It's smart, right? It should be a requirement for you as far as shooting stuff, at least if you're going to be shooting steel, especially if you're going to be shooting steel with a rifle, especially if you're going to be shooting it at 25 yards like we're doing here. 25 yards is up there, like 30, 40 yards back here. But anyway, that has been the UBAR3 and the UBARX. You guys can go and get it. You guys can go and make your own. I think it's fantastic. In my opinion, of course, my very biased opinion, I think it is the latest and greatest in AR lowers that you can make yourself at home with a robotic squirting device. But give it a shot. I think you guys might like it, especially if you've got a UBAR1 or a UBAR2, right? It's just a straight up upgrade. You get a better in all ways lower out the other end of it. It's a good time. But I'm going to let this thing cool off. It's almost getting too hot to hold out here on the hand guards, even with the heat shields in there. That suppressor just makes everything get so much hotter. But with that all said, I've got a Patreon. If you guys want to check that out, you can leave a comment in the comment section saying if you want the gas blowback or the AEG, which is better for airsoft CQB battles. And then I hope you guys have a nice time. Check out the Patreon if you want, and I will see you in the future where we talk about shotguns or maybe shoot Glocks or something. I don't know what comes next. I can't keep track of things these days, but I will see you all in the future.